Look, so many pine cones. All the ones, if you leave them out on the ground, obviously they open up by themselves eventually. And that's when the cockatoos get to them and clean them all out of pine nuts. So many of them. Could have all been made into pesto, couldn't they? So very many. That one there hasn't opened. That can be put in the oven and roasted until the blades come open. Then the nuts, the seeds can be shaken out. Look, this one, the blades haven't opened yet. These ones can all be heat treated. It should open up and look like that once it's been put in the oven, and you can shake the seeds out. That one's lost all its seeds now. Now here's one. It hasn't opened up due to the elements, but it's been got at by cockatoos. You can see all the empty shells, see? The empty shells were eaten out where the pine nut would have been. Each one of those would have been a pine nut. Half of it's still good. That's all resin on the outside. So even when they're closed up, they definitely contain pine nuts. They definitely contain pine nuts, all these cones. They do. They most definitely do. Now I can decide to let the cockatoos have them all, or just some of them. We might like to eat some, actually. We've decided we want to eat some. Have you ever seen so many pine cones? So this one is full of nuts, obviously. This one's full of nuts and can be heated until the blades open up and all the nuts can be shaken out. Well, there's so many. There's so many pine cones. We didn't realize how many pine cones and how many pine nuts we actually had. We've got more than one tree. Oops, what am I looking at? Yes, pine cones. Pine cones. My fingers are all sticky with pine cones and I don't want to ruin my camera. So many pine cones. There's so many pine cones. That one's been emptied by the cockatoos. And there's a perfectly virgin one that's perfectly eatable. So many of them. There's another excellent virgin one over there. Just has to be heated and shaken. That's all it has to have done to it. Yes, in the brighter light you can clearly see how the pine cone is structured. There's a virgin looking pine cone and all the seeds inside. Cleaned out, each one cleaned out by a cockatoo with their strong beaks. A source of pine nuts. So many of them. It's a bit like a fossil, isn't it? Geology. Archaeology. This is only an experiment, but we've got a pine cone in the oven and it was put in a virgin and now it's come out with all its blades splitting open. So heating it definitely works, and the whole kitchen smells of strong scent of pine in here. But we should, once that cools down, once the blades open a little more and it cools down, we should be able to shake the seeds out. And all the resin seems to have melted, doesn't it? So It's quite, it seems to work. Heat definitely opens the blades up. I think it would probably be easier to do it in front of a campfire where you could just sit there relaxedly and just rotate the cones. Or a nice log fire in a log cabin somewhere, I suppose. Just rotate them until they are split. Lots of fun anyway. Here's a small stone pine, Pinus pinea, that should be bearing soon. That one hasn't had cones yet, but it should very soon in the next year or so. They're a good drought resistant tree. They can stand the high temperatures. But if you want more cones, once they start fruiting, you should give them a bit of extra water in summertime if you want more cones. Good tough little drought resistant tree. Pinus pinea, stone pine, source of pine nuts. They're the same nuts they use in those Greek pastries, those delicious pastries. That stone pine is quite huge now. That's Pinus pinea. I wish I'd planted more now. We'd have an endless supply of pesto nuts, wouldn't we? It can become a huge tree, and lots of pine cones, very drought resistant. Plus they make cockatoos happy. Look, I told a lie. This small pine tree has actually got its first cones on it. It's got its first cones. That's something to look forward to, and this one's closer to the house, so we can come down whenever we need pine nuts. It's definitely in fruit now. It's definitely in fruit. So that's a junior pine cone, a junior stone pine tree that is giving its first fruits. So what we'll do this summer, we'll give this junior pine tree a really good soaking, and we should have lots and lots of pine cones next year. It'll grow faster too. Something to look forward to. Someone's doing woodwork. And they're coming out, yes. They're already black before we put them in. Now that's one way to harvest them. You've definitely got black seeds. So they're stone pine nuts. Now all we have to do is break the shells. So, here they are. They're still warm. Stone pine, so called because they look like stones, don't they? That's why they're called a stone pine. There's my camera. That's why they're called stone pines, because they're like pebbles. Yeah. I'll just use this brick. Crack a cup. Oh look, there we are. Eureka. Finally a pine nut, look. A pine nut like you find in the supermarket. A fresh pine nut though. grown on one's own ground. Oops, there it is. A beautiful fresh pine nut. All in one's backyard. We'll go and crack it. Oops. In any case, very delicious pine nuts. Well, we've just been eating them and they passed the taste test. Yummy. They taste very nice. Grow your own.